Yes, everybody, welcome back to Lily White Lab. Finally, back-to-back wins at home. Um, I think it's a bit of a coincidence, to be honest. I didn't go to the game on the weekend, didn't go tonight, and now we've won two. But yeah, I think today was a pretty good performance. I think there's a lot to like, and then there was some negatives. I think the positive things were a lot around actually how Frank set up, and I think most of the negatives were individual things. I do think this game fed into what Frank wants to do because the opposition was super aggressive, and that did leave us with lots of spaces in behind, which I think Frank really enjoys. But there was also things that Frank, I think, implemented that he hasn't previously that were successful. So I'm gonna go through. I've got some notes here about the game. I'm gonna go through it on the tactics board if I can get it up. Um, Hopefully everyone can see that. Oh, sorry, 1 second. I'm gonna redo that. Yes, cool. Um, so we set up in this sort of 4-2-3-1 shape, as per usual. Obviously, we have played in the sort of 4-2-2, but I think as the performance was good on the weekend, he clearly kind of implemented this same system with Simmons in the 10. I really, before I start, hope that this doesn't mean that Simmons doesn't play on the weekend because I think again he was really good tonight. Might as well start with Simmons because there's a few things I want to note around him. Like I think one thing that I've noticed a lot, well, in the last couple games is he's getting much higher and he's really testing the back line. And if I just put their back line in, the amount of times he's making these runs is really important because what it does is it, especially against a man-to-man press, which is what they were really aggressive and locking in onto our players very tight. What it does is it pushes that guy to follow him. So if Simmons is making this run in behind, especially when the midfield have the ball, and Gray, let's say, is able to clip it over, whether or not Simmons gets this ball, it doesn't really matter. The effect is the same for me because obviously, ideally, he's going to get the ball in behind. But if he makes that run once, maybe even twice in the first 10 minutes, let's say, this player is now very wary of that run and is likely, just human nature wise in football, that he's likely to drop off a couple yards because he knows that Simmons is capable of getting in behind and he's ready to track him. That then creates this space for Simmons in the pockets because he's got that extra yard or two of time on the ball. And I think that has been a really good sort of strategy from Frank, but also I assume from Simmons to try and get himself more time on the ball. And this is part of him getting used to the league and the intensity. And he's finding solutions to how he can get more time on the ball because, like he's not, as all number 10s are, then none of them are that, built. Um, what they're good at is finding ways of getting extra seconds on the ball and then being able to create. And I think this thing of him making these more direct runs is really important to how he's now performing. And you see him today just and on the weekend with just so much more time on the ball, and then he's able to start dictating it. And we saw how many times kind of the play was going through him. He's so intelligent at knowing what's around him, playing the right passes all the time. I also think on him, like I think there was a preconception of sort of like this superstar player that isn't going to come and graft and wants everything too pretty. But Simmons is a grafter. Like he worked so hard in that game, but he's worked so hard all season. Like he's constantly hustling to win the ball back. And that you can't really fault that. The effort's there, and now the output's coming. And I think there's more to come from Simmons. I really think this is another positive step. Obviously, not perfect still, but it's early days with him, and I think he's really starting to find his feet now. The other real positive I wanted to talk about was Jed Spence because I think that was the best I've seen Jed Spence play in a while. Um, he was good on the weekend as well, but I thought again tonight he was really good, and I think again this is a frank adjustment that I like. It's a solution to some of our problems. So you had Odobert kind of more comfortable holding the width at times, and this is really important that it is Odobert because you don't want Richarlison out here. You don't want Tell. You don't want Johnson out there because they're not really as comfortable receiving the ball in the touchline where there's limited space. You're working with a smaller kind of proximity and you're often very tight to your marker. So you have to have the ball manipulation, the quick feet to be able to get out of those situations and also the ability to go 1v1. Whereas a lot of the other left wingers we've played often want to drift into these areas, whether that's out to in runs or that's kind of drifting into the pockets here. So I think Odobert is really key to getting the best out of Spence. Now, I don't think Odobert was perfect tonight, but I think just the solution of that pair worked much better. And then you get the upside of Spence because he is so much more comfortable being narrow. And today he just looked so much more in flow. His ability to drive in this direction is so much better than his ability to drive down there. And that's just obvious because he's a right-footed player. But also he just looks more comfortable doing it. And so I think that is key. You also saw him kind of popping up in these areas. You saw him popping up in the pivot at times where maybe Gray would have made a run and Spence could pick it up here. Obviously, you had the usual kind of back three setup in possession where Porro plays deep. And I think I'll come on to Porro after, but yeah, that sort of suits because Porro has that deep passing ability. And Spence was kind of given a little bit of a free role. And I think this was partly, again, because Prague went so man to man. The rotations were key in trying to kind of destabilize their block because it was something I don't know something like this. I don't know what the exact the shape was 4-5-1, but something like that where the marker was just following them constantly. And when you're playing against a man-to-man press, the rotations are so key because let's say Spence pops up here and Gray starts to fill this space. Then these two have a decision to make because does this player follow Spence or does he pass him on to him? And then that's where confusion arises. And that's how you destabilize a man-to-man system. Now, obviously, the best teams at doing it are able to really know that if Spence goes into this zone, suddenly he becomes his responsibility and vice versa. But, Slavia Prague aren't a top team and those rotations really destabilize them. And which is why when Spence was doing stuff like that and Gray was pulling out here maybe and Odobert might have come in here and then Richarlison might have gone up there, we were seeing these massive, massive spaces opening up because of how good our rotations were. So I think that is a massive key to playing against such a kind of aggressive man-to-man system. The rotations are key. And I think the other thing that's really key against man-to-man systems is dribbling ability. And we saw Kudus, well, I think his final ball really lacked in this game. His ability to actually one-to-one, if you're playing man-to-man and you're able to take on your man, then that is a complete destabilizer because then if your man, is left here, and let's say, that's man to man here, then they have a decision to make again. Do they go and commit? And then you're leaving Charles, and then you're all passing them on. And then often a spare man comes and, these guys might be caught up the pitch because the midfielders haven't followed. So again, man to man, while it's a great system when it's drilled right, if you can destabilize it with those rotations or those 1v1 players or those carrying players, then these are when the spaces open up. And there was a lot of moments where we had these kind of situations where we're running at their back four with 4 or 5 players, and this is where I had a problem with the kind of individuals because I think we've really, I know we won 3-0 by the way, but against better opposition we got to put more of those away because I think there was just bad decision making, and I think some of that is down to individuals for me. I think the only one that I really trusted his decision making in that game was Simmons, and I think he made mostly right decisions. Kudus, he gets in his flow and he might beat 1 or 2 players and then he kind of puts his head down, and today there wasn't really an excuse for him. I think at times he's had 2 or 3 men on him, but there was times today where he was free and he takes 1 or 2 extra touches, and that was frustrating because he did so well up until that point, and then all it needed was maybe a little give and go with Simmons to get him in, or there was times where the opposition got dragged over and all it needed was that pass out here, simple passes that he just didn't see. Not that he was ignoring them necessarily, but he just doesn't see them. And I think that is something that is definitely coachable because it's a lot about getting your head up when you play. So I think that was very, very, very key to our success, but also a bit of a detriment, as in Kudus being able to beat one or two men was key, but the detriment was that his head was down a lot. Yeah, that was very, very big part of the game, especially in the first half. Let me just look at what else I had down here. Um, let's talk about Odobert. Um, Now, I think obviously first 5 minutes he would look sharp. Like he did a 1v1 that was just rapid down the line, wrapped it across. Richarlison should probably score. It was a crazy save, to be honest. But his ability there, like, that is what you need from him. Don't question yourself. Just do it. It should be second nature with these best 1v1 players. It's just automatic. It's just natural. Like the way they get into their whatever kind of move they're gonna do, whether it's a feint, a step over, whatever. That should be off the cuff often. And I think when Odobert gets too much in his own head, it slows down a bit. But in that first moment, he didn't think, just straight down the line, wrapped it across. Minimal kind of head up, just needing to put it in an area. Richarlison was there and probably should tuck it away. But I think one of the strange things, and I was wondering why this might be, and I think it's goes back to what I said, that he seems more comfortable and more dangerous when he goes down the line, and he's not a left-footed player, he's right-footed. So that's quite a rare thing. And I think part of the reason for that is that when he doesn't have to think as much, and that's the case when he goes down the left, because one, it requires that burst to get into the byline when you're running down the line. That requires a burst, so you've already put that kind of intent there. But also, when you're crossing from this area, it requires just don't even think about it. Wrap it into an area and don't even, like, as long as you put it in a good area with pace, people can get on the end of it. Whereas when he's out here and he feints inside and he has that time to think, because there was a few moments where he's here and he's able to cross it on his stronger foot with a bit more time, he seems to just be less effective there. And this seems like a thing where he's overthinking. He might kind of take an extra second and then the chance is kind of gone, and the keeper might have already read it, which he did a couple times, where he's shaping up and it's a bit too slow, so that the keeper already knows he's going to whip that into the far post, and he's on his toes already and comes and collects that. So I think that is more what I need from Odobert, is being that second nature. Like, don't overthink these things. Be off the cuff. Be just have intent, and just go with it. Don't overthink it. But I want to say that I think this selection together suits both of them really well, because Spence is able to do this, but he's more comfortable doing this, while Odobert is also able to do that, but also do that. And I think that just makes us unpredictable, because they're both able to occupy the central areas, but also the wide areas. While Spence isn't necessarily at his best here, he's happy to come out and at least receive it here and combine, but he needs the license to then, when he does receive it out here, be able to drift inside and rotate with his winger. So I think that is key. But like I've said so many times, Odebert's so young, and I think there's good signs there. Tell again, good signs. Well, I'll get on to Tell in a minute, but these things have to be worked on, but they also need time and patience, because Odobert needs a run. Like, these players need minutes to improve, and I think this run coming up is going to be key for both of Odobert and Tell, because we're going to need to rely on them. It's a thick schedule, and yeah, it's going to be kind of the making of them. They'll get plenty of minutes, so let's hope those things can improve. Um, I will talk about now. Let's talk the back line. I think Van der Ven on the ball has shown really good improvements in the last two games. I think his passing has become so much more direct, and he doesn't overthink and doesn't delay. He just plays forward, and this has helped our central progression a lot. The same with Romero, but we know Romero can do that with ease. Van der Ven, I think that was the thing with me where I wanted him to go up a level, is his on the ball passing, because I think he's got the ability, because he's so crisp at the way he strikes the ball. Romero adds more disguise on it, so Romero is able to kind of, let's say, look out here and then play a pass that way, for example, like reverse it. Whereas Van der Ven doesn't necessarily have that disguise, but because he can strike a ball so well, he doesn't even really need the disguise. As long as he puts enough pace on it, the defender won't be able to get across quickly enough anyway. So I think that is really, really impressive. And then obviously I've been massive on him using his carrying ability more. And he did that a lot today. I think he was unlucky to get that yellow card. I think that was stupid. Was never a yellow card, but so good at cutting across the opposition and taking, especially, and this is key. I want to talk about this as well. Um, if again, man to man system, these guys are all tight. Let's say um, they're all tight, right? Van der Ven gets the ball here. Let's say Spence plays it back to him, and this guy comes tight. When Van der Ven then takes that guy out the game, then it all opens up. Again, he's going to have to jump. Now Gray's free or whoever it is. Beating a player 1v1 is so key against the man-to-man system because it completely destabilizes the opposition. So I think that is massive. And Van der Ven's ability to carry the ball can be really useful against these systems. And I'm glad that we're leaning into that more. Again, my concerns around this whole thing is what do we do when teams just sit off like this? Because I think Frank is very happy to play against teams that press because the gaps open up. But what if we're facing something like that? And then what the pattern's like? Are we still going to be rigid? Are we only rotating because it's a man to man, or are we going to be rotating because we want to open up the opposition? And I want to see that more. And obviously, we can only play against what we've gone up against. Brentford were pretty aggressive as well. Similar kind of game, I think. And this one again. So we'll see how that progresses. But I think against what we were up against in terms of man to man, really, really good. Porro, I think he is struggling right now, man. Like, and you can't blame him because he's been overplayed to death. He's been overplayed since he joined the club. Um, Partly that was due to at first Spence's banishment. Then now Spence is playing both sides, and now Doggy's injured, so we don't have another left back. So Spence is playing all the minutes left back, but we badly need fullbacks at this club because this guy, while he doesn't ever get injured, his performances drop so much when he's overplayed, and I just think he's making rash decisions. It looks more again, I think more mental fatigue than anything. Um, he gives the ball away so much at the moment, and for a player of his quality, it's just not good enough. But we don't really have a choice because we don't have the players. So we need to hang on till January. And whether that means we see Van der Ven at left back at times so that Spence can play here, I think that is an option we have to consider because otherwise Porro is going to struggle because he's been overplayed to the max and his quality has been so poor in the last few weeks. And again today, I just thought he was super super average or below average. There was moments kind of where he gave the ball away. There was a few moments as well where like he plays it into sorry, Simmons might have set it into his feet and Simmons might be looking for a turn there and it's a simple pass, he's not able to complete it. And those things they look like mental and technical fatigue to me. Not really his fault, not really the manager's fault, the recruitment staff's fault, and the backing of the owners. So yeah, though that was kind of my overall thoughts. Did I have anything else? Yeah, I think I just as a whole, and this is something I've been big on. I've been big on this under Ange as well in a different way, but we struggle to control games. We struggle to take the sting out of games and put our foot on the ball. I think the best player at doing this in the team is Gray and Romero. Um, this guy does not help at all because we were 1-0 up early. We're cruising, and this again might be instruction, probably is instruction, but the amount of like long balls, he's spamming, like we're 1-0 up. Let's control the game. Let's dominate possession. Let's get up the pitch where we can set in our shape and control the game in their half. If we're all up here, and then we want to start playing more risky, then it takes so long for the opposition to get towards our goal that it's going to be much more difficult for them. What we end up doing is Vicario would get the ball back here. We're barely pushed up, and Vicario is, pinging a ball which goes pretty much just back to them. And then we're set in our not low block, but we're set in this deep shape where we're not able to get out. And then we're kind of the ball's coming back, and we're playing this end-to-end football where we should never be playing end-to-end football against a team of their quality. Like they were awful, by the way. And so there's so much to say about just controlling the game. And I think Gray and Romero do try to do this, especially him. And I think people sometimes get frustrated with Romero when he stops on the ball. I love it because it really slows the game down, and he's able to pick the passes that are required. So it's not that he's just slowing the ball down and then attracting pressure. He's slowing the game down. The pressure comes, and then we play through, and then the spaces open up, rather than just doing that and then the opposition just get the ball back. I can't understand that. And it doesn't help when his kicking is really, really bad. And obviously, this is a midfield profile for issue as well. Like Gray is the best at it. I don't think he's elite at it. He's obviously a young player. He's the most like weirdly he's the most mature out of all of our midfielders, I'd say, especially on the ball. This guy is never going to do it. And we need a player that can control tempo and control the game in midfield. We still don't have that. And I've said this for weeks and weeks and weeks. But it doesn't help again while Vicario has got the ball. Gray might be offering here, he might be marked, and Polina's standing behind his marker or standing in front of his marker, which I also noticed at times, standing in front of his marker, and then he obviously knows he's not an option. He doesn't then move to try to take him away. He just stands there, and that's just useless to me. Like if your marker's there, take him away so that Gray can then come and receive it in there, or if it's Gray out here and Spence can come receive it there, or whatever it is. But don't just stand there with a marker on you because that's useless. Yeah, I think I'm not going to go on and on about Paulinho again, but I do think the game is very different if he doesn't play. But we've had that discussion before. And I think that's everything really that I had written down. Let's talk about the subs quickly. Um, so we got. There's only a couple I really want to talk about. I just want to talk about Tell and Kolomwani really because the others were meh, and there's not much point talking about them. Again, I think Tell a little bit erratic, I'd say. Um, Sometimes his head makes a decision before his feet do, if that makes sense. So he knows what he wants to do, but he hasn't been able to get his body in the right position to do it. So there's times where he gets the ball and he knows he wants to take one touch and then burst past them, but he's not in the right body position. His touch is heavy and he might not get onto it. Still just too not refined enough on the ball, but in these moments, you can see there's quality there, and his ability to get shots off, which I've always said is key, and that's what we can build off. You know, 2 or 3 moments where it's not really in a great position to get a shot off, but he manages to work one and test the keeper a couple times, and that's quite a rare skill to be able to do that. And I think the more volume we get him the ball in these situations, the more it's going to come from it. I think he's improving. Again, super young. Let's just be patient with him. But there is a lot to build around, but still too erratic on the ball, as I think we've all come to realize. So I think I think it was a positive cameo. I think his Newcastle cameo was really positive as well, which went under the radar, despite the team being a bit of a mess. I thought he actually changed that game really, really well. And then the last person is Moani, and I think he's so good. I genuinely think he's so good. I think we look a threat every time he's on the pitch. That chest he did to Simmons, like there's just nowhere in a million years Richarlison's able to do that. And that little move was that's 2 top players in the same sync, like being able to work in sync in a synchronized way and are on the same wavelength. And you only really get that kind of thing from top players, like the ability to just chest that down, knowing that Xavi Simmons is going to run onto it. And then Xavi Simmons, like the speed of thought to be able to, what he did is kind of just it's slightly shaped to shoot on his left foot and then drag it, disguise it, and win the penalty. Like that's just quality play all round from those two. And that's the kind of thing you get when you get top players close together. And I've been saying this for so long. Get your top players in close proximity and give them the freedom to find solutions. And that's exactly what those two did. And I just want to see us build around these two in this sort of way with Simmons behind him, because Simmons is now adding this run to his game, and we know Muani can come and link play. And I think that is really, really useful because it makes us unpredictable once again. If they're able to both do the opposite thing, then you've got different ways of hurting opposition. So I think, yeah, Moani again, limited kind of opportunities he gets. He works off scraps a lot of the time, and he makes a really, really good use of scraps. So I think another positive cameo from him. But let's go to questions if anyone has any. Transfer special is coming out tomorrow. Yes. I have a very good guest who's not a Spurs fan, but a really, really good kind of football mind. And he's bringing a few graphs to go through that we're going to talk through in specific positions that I've requested. So that's going to be a really, really interesting one. Um, yeah, keep an eye out for that. It's going to be in a sort of podcast format, but it will be out on YouTube and stuff. Yeah, any questions you guys have, just let me know. Why was Spence constantly taking us up space in the 10, pushing Xavi backwards so much this evening? This goes back to what I was talking about with the sort of man to man. Why does Richarlison keep ending up in DM? Um, this is just how you kind of play, and I like it. Not in every game, but when a team like that are so kind of poor in quality, but are so aggressive, then Xavi is pulling away one of the. Have they got 12, 11 players? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah. When you've got a team that want to be so aggressive but are pretty poor in quality, then you have someone like Xavi. Let's say this centre back was on Xavi. The deeper he goes, you're pulling a centre back out of position. Now I'm not saying that Xavi was followed all the time by the centre back. He wasn't, but let's just say this is a DM or whatever. Xavi's pulling a defensive player out of the picture, and Spence. Oh, not being spared. Shed. 1 second. Give me a second, guys. Sorry. Yeah. So what I was talking about is, let's say they're going really aggressive. Can you see that now? Is my screen showing? Yeah. So like I said, let's say they're going with a really, really aggressive man-to-man press, which they were, and Simmons is dropping deep, dropping deep. He's pulling the defensive player out of position, and that space is more valuable than just having Simmons here with a man on him. It's much more valuable if Simmons can pull away a defensive player and that space opens up for someone else. Even though obviously ideally you'd have Simmons doing this, that's not how it's going to play out in that system, because he's going to be followed and then Spence is able to fill that role. And that obviously that's a bit dramatic in the way I did it, because the centre back's probably not going to follow him all the way there, but whoever it is marking him, if they pass him on or whatever, Simmons is creating space for other players is my overall point. So yeah, I think that's a positive. It's good rotation, and important. Um, what other questions do we have? Yeah, I already discussed Odobert. I thought it was pretty poor, to be honest. I thought he started quite well, but I think a little bit meh. I said he needs to play without thinking more. I think he's overthinking. He doesn't play with enough intent. But there's still so much quality there, and he linked up with Spence really well. And I think him playing there facilitates Spence coming more narrow, which is important. Um, the ref was awful. I touched on that Van der Ven yellow. I think that was ridiculous because he just got away from him. Um, do we have anyone on our squad? I think this one's from my dad actually. So shout out. Who's probably watching downstairs. Do we have anyone in our squad who can play midfield and control the tempo of the game? That kind of profile is really missing tonight, especially when we're winning 2-0. You can see he's obviously been watching my content, with all the words that he's using. I said Gray is 100% the best at doing this, but we badly need it. That profile. I've been saying it for 2 seasons now, maybe 3. Um, I've got a video coming out just on that midfield position where I'm going to go through loads of targets. I've scouted like 10 players so far, rated them all on a spreadsheet, and then I'm going to talk about the best value for money, the best kind of young project ones, the best that are going to be ready to impact the team. So watch out for that video. We'll also discuss it tomorrow on the podcast. Do you think Bentancur and Gray will be the starters and the pivot going forward? I actually do. I think this is what he's going to go with most of the time. Um, Now I know that people really want to see Bergvall in there. I don't think Frank trusts Bergvall on the pivot. And I feel mixed about that. I can see why he doesn't trust him. I think Bergvall is a bit erratic still, a bit immature in his game. There's so much quality there. But with what Frank wants from a pivot, he wants stability. He wants defensive solidity. Obviously, he's realised that we need more progression in there, which is why he's dropping Paulinho at the moment. But Bergvall, I think for him is a step too far. So I think Gray and Bentancur provide that balance that he kind of wants. So I think that is the one we're going to see most often going forward. And while I don't love it, I get it, and I it's a big upgrade from Paulinho and Bentancur, but it's not a pivot that's gonna get you anywhere massive in my eyes. Um, do you think we can see Tell and um, Kolo Muani start up front on the weekend? Muani will start for sure. I think. I wouldn't. I don't think Tell will start. Who started on the left last game? Trying to think. Um, who started on the left last? Oh, Richarlison. Oh no, Moani started on the left. And Richarlison started up top. To be honest, I actually think that's what he'll go. He'll start Richarlison up top, and he'll play Moani on the left with Kudus on the right and Simmons in the 10. That's the most likely, I'd say. Um, my thoughts on Frank is he is starting to make some improvements. I'm not sold on him. Um, I think there's been good signs. I think the Newcastle game was really bad when we drew 2-2, but the last two games I've seen a few signs of more fluidity, um, more imagination in the final third. I do want to caveat that by saying that I think Brentford and Prague really played into our hands with how aggressive they are, and how they went to that man-to-man press and really pushed on us. And I think Frank loves that. He loves space in behind and to be able to play in behind. So I think that does suit him. So I want to see, which I think he'll have to face a lot more, is teams that sit off. I think perfect like experiment for that is this weekend we're playing against a Sean Dyche team, which are likely to probably sit off a bit more. Then you'll see whether Frank has made some kind of changes and tweaks to that structure that I think has been poor against those sort of sides. So we'll see this weekend, really. Um, do you think it's realistic for us to see any minutes from Williams, Barnett, Tynan Thompson, or Byfield this season? I wish. I don't think so, though. I don't see Frank as someone that's going to prioritize that. It doesn't look like he is. Um, I think Tynan Thompson would be a really good alternative to someone like Odobert because he can hold width, he can do the 1v1s, and then you allow Spence to come more in field. So profile wise, I think it works, but again, I just don't see it. We've got a lot of options in that attacking area, and Frank, he's playing Sarr and Bergvall in the 10 before he's even thinking. Like Xavi was struggling to get into the team as a 10, so there's no way he's going to put Williams Barnett there, which is difficult. I think Williams Barnett should be going out on loan as soon as we can get him out on loan because this is getting stupid for him now. It's just too easy. And he scored 5 goals tonight in a youth Champions League game. So the level is it's not making him any better. Simmons with 290 is going to start. I think not. Yeah, it's possible. I said the same. I was worried when he played 90 minutes that meant that he's not going to start on the weekend. I really hope he does. We'll see. I think the only argument to say that he will is that Frank's trying to get that rhythm out of him and get him lots and lots of impacts output so that he can be more confident and feel more free. So hopefully that he will start. Could Kobbie Mainoo be the guy to control the midfield? I think Kobbie Mainoo is an interesting one because he's so composed on the ball. He'll take the ball under all circumstances. So I think he ticks a lot of the boxes. The only thing with Kobbie Mainoo is he's more of a carrier than a passer, and I think we lack passes in this team so much. We have so many players who are just not good at passing the ball. I think we've got Maddison, obviously injured, Simmons, Porro, whose form has fallen off a cliff, Romero. Is that it for our part? Like the rest of them are not great passers. So yeah, I think that while I love Kobbie Mainoo and I think he would improve us, in the sort of mold of a Bissouma where he can take the ball in the half turn and carry it in between players, I think we need to go with something different. Whereas maybe in the summer, if we bring in one of those passes in January, we offload, let's say, we bring in a proper passer in January of a top quality. Um, we get rid of Bentancur and Palhinha long term, and then we can bring in a Kobe Mainu. Then you might have more balance there. But I think Kobe Mainu is too similar to what we're trying to make Bergvall into, if that makes sense. Chema Andres would be the perfect profile for us, I think. See, I would love to speak on him, but I'm gonna save it because he's big. He's a big talking point in my video. Um, I think he's great, and that's all I'll give a say. I give. Do you not have concerns about Maine's ground coverage? No, not in the Frank pivot because I think what Frank does is protects those areas so well with numbers that I think you can get away with it. I think where Mainu's struggling at United is in that midfield too. Um, and their system just stretches that midfield all over the place, and Bruno doesn't stop running. He's like got great fitness, and I think it's over exaggerating those issues for him. Um, will Kulusevski, when he comes back, not be in that bracket? Passing wise, I think Kulusevski has like a certain type of pass in his locker where it's like a final third pass where he can slip like nice passes in, but he's not like a really clean passer, and he's only really got one angle of pass because he's so left-footed, but he's also so one-sided that he's constantly it's the pass where he's just opening up to the left and stroking it like that rather than like a passing range. Could a Madders Xavi midfield work? Yes, in certain games, I think what we'll see under Frank is more one of them playing on the left and then drifting in field and them combining like that. I would love to see Madders in the pivot while we don't have a proper passer in there. Obviously, not in games against really tough opposition, but where we need to control games, I think that's where I want to see Maddison until we buy a proper passer in there. I don't think that will be the case under Frank though. Um, yeah, Isaac says Chema Andres is Real Madrid bound. Yeah, and I've been that's one of my caveats on him. Um, who else we got? Let's go. Vicario's ball playing was better, but still frantic. Would love to get someone more comfortable. Yeah, I think the only issue is like it's not priority. I think Vicario is 100% upgradable, especially in the way we're trying to play. And just long term, I think his shot stopping doesn't outweigh the fact that he can't really command his box well. His ball playing is meh. I think short passing wise, I've always said that I think his short passing is decent. I think his clipped long passing is really really poor. And for me, like I want a keeper that really like spreads calm across the back line. And I think that's such a big thing that goes underappreciated. Like the best keeper, like Allison, for example, you never see him flustered ever, even after a mistake. And Vicario, while I love his personality, I just think it's not great for a back line and trying to kind of spread that calm. I don't think Chema and Jess will go back to Real. What would be the main attributes you'd want our left backs in Jan to have? See, this is really interesting, this one, because at first I wanted a kind of Udogi light, someone who's really athletic, able to get up and down, probably someone with better final third delivery, but maybe less strong defensively, so that you could play a doggy if he was fit in the more difficult games where he's going to have a one-to-one battle a lot, and then you could play someone who's more kind of creative in the final third to really knock on the door of the opposition, especially when we're having like Porro playing that deeper role. You give that license to the left back. Now, I think again because of our lack of passers, a technical left back who's able to pass the ball would be really useful, especially as that would probably allow Porro to bomb on more at times, and the left back can play those passes. Um, I also think we might need to replace Udogi at some point if these injuries continue. So it's a difficult one, but that is going to be discussed at length tomorrow in the video with names and everything else. So keep an eye out for that. Well, I've not tried giving Kinski more chances. I think he's bad at saving shots. Like I think that's it. I think at the moment, it's really hard to get a read of keepers because one, I just don't know enough about keeper scouting. I've never really been that interested in goalkeepers, but also there's such a small sample size, so we don't know how like there's probably so much more going on in training that we don't see. I would loan him out eventually, but I think at the moment we need, especially as we were shipping goals for a while, we need some stability back there. So I think Vicario is the best option at the moment. Do you feel Van de Ven will leave us anytime soon? I think there's a lot of talk of him somewhere like Madrid. They'd have to pay huge money. I think not many of our players have improved as much as well. I don't think many of our players have improved this season. Full stop. Van der Ven is one that I think has gone up a level this season. I think he's been our best player this season. Um, on the ball and defensively, he's gone up a level. I used to have Romero way above him. I think it's getting close now. I think he's been, and I didn't necessarily expect him to go on this far in terms of like the thing. I think he's been so good this season. Um, so, there'll be interest from everywhere, but we'll see. We'll see. Best partner for Gray in the pivot. I'm sorry to say, but I think it is Bentancur at the moment. And that's sad, sad times. But I think Bergvall is a little bit too erratic. I think it could be Bergvall, but you want to get Gray a run of games first so that he gets that stability. And then you can afford to have someone like Bergvall who might be a bit more maverickish. Um, Gray needs to have a run of games where he gets used to really holding that midfield together, more confident, more commanding, and then you can maybe chuck in a Bergvall with him. I think at first you need Bentancur's experience, and while Bentancur plays a bit immaturely sometimes, um, there's been periods in games this season where he's gone off, and our midfields look even worse. So I do think at the moment I would go Gray and Bentancur. But I do think Bergvall can make that his own. Xavi won man of the match. Yeah, I think super deserved. I just think another top performance for a top player. I think it was so funny that people wrote him off after 10 games because anyone who's watched him properly knows what a top player he is, and he's just finding his feet, and he's still a young player, but he's brilliant. He's so good. Um, Yeah, I saw this guy. Apparently, Mikael Jack's a crazy talent, the 15-year-old. There's a 15-year-old keeper who's training with the first team at the moment who's meant to be crazy talented. Obviously, long way away, but that is one to definitely keep an eye on. Um, I'm going to answer 3 or 4 more of these and then we're going to go. But everyone who is in here, please do subscribe. Like I said, we've got a big transfer video coming out tomorrow. And so much more content. So please do subscribe. Who would be the ideal keeper? Keepers is a difficult one for me. I'm not aware of good keepers, and I don't really trust my judgment on keepers. But I will try formulate a list soon. I know you might talk about it in your next video, but Alex Scott more of a passer carry. You know what? With Alex Scott, it's super interesting because it's hard to get a read of him. The way that Bournemouth play is so chaotic and so much about just transitions and chaos ball that whenever he gets the ball, he's just pinging it into the channels, and that's by instruction. He was on my list, and I found it really hard to judge him. I watched a bit of his stuff at Bristol City, but that was so long ago. My instinct is that he's more of a carrier, but it's difficult to say as it is with any of those players in that Bournemouth team because they play just a crazy style of football. I would probably say that he's a Bergvall-esque player. I think we really need to avoid signing more of those players because I know Sarr, Gray, Bergvall, they're all similar age and while they're all different players, they want to kind of do similar-ish things, and I think we need someone who's very different. Of that. Yeah, R. Greven says Scott is similar to Bergvall profile-wise. Yeah, I would probably agree. Did you see the clip of Vuskovic sprint across the block a lot shot last game? Not looking good. Yeah, that was tough viewing. He looked like he was running in mud. Like, yeah, I think with Vuskovic, there's so much upside there, but the floor could be very low as well if you don't protect him properly. I've never really come across a footballer like him, like who's that elite in so many aspects, but then has this one attribute that could hold him back. You have to be very careful about how you build around him, but there is crazy potential there if you use him right, and if you don't, then you can make a lot of money off him because lots of sides will use him right. Yeah. Last 2 I'm gonna do. Thought on Pape's development. Yeah, I think he struggled. I think he struggled again tonight. He had a similar kind of similar. I had a similar frustration with him as I did with Kudus at times, where they drive past a couple players and then their heads are down and they're not finding that pass. And Sar's usually better than this at that, I think. But yeah, he just looks a little bit out of sync at the moment, and it is difficult because he hasn't had a proper run. Um, but I think, yeah, I think it's been difficult for him since he kind of dropped out of the team. I still really like him. I think there's no point in kind of getting rid of him at the moment. But he does have to at some point take that leap, and I thought this would be his season because he started so well. But he has to make more strides in his possession game. I think there's so much to like about him in duels and out of possession, but I think on the ball he has to take a leap. Did I come across Keishu Sano in the research? Is that the guy playing Eredivisie? I don't. I think that is the guy you're talking about. He wasn't in my research yet. The thing is, like people keep suggesting names to me, but I'm on like 30, and I don't think I can add any more because it will never get done. Like I'm only a third of the way through at the moment. I'm going to try smash it out this week, and hopefully have the video out next week. But no, I didn't come across him. Hadi El Hassawi says follow from Egypt here. Thank you. Shout out Egypt. Think Salah could be a decent understudy to Kudus. I hate Salah. Don't want him at my club. Um, I feel like Bergvall pushed for a move in the next 18 months if Frank doesn't start to use him in the right way. Yeah, potentially. Potentially, I think Bergvall's got a lot of minutes for someone his age. Um, Frank just doesn't seem to quite know what to do with him at the moment, which is frustrating because he's so talented. Um, yeah, I really hope he starts getting more midfield minutes rather than 10 and left wing minutes, but it doesn't seem like Frank likes him there. Um, the thing is, with this run of games we've got coming up, there's going to be so many opportunities for so much of this rotation and so many of these young players that lots of players will be able to have the opportunity to make their impact and stake a claim to be first team players because there's so many positions up for grabs at the moment. I'd say the only lock offs are we have two fullbacks, so obviously them, keeper, obviously, two centre backs, lock offs. But then the midfield, it's anyone's position, like the two in midfield. I think Xavi and Kudus have locked off those two positions. The left wing is open, and the striker's kind of open. I think Colomwani could play on the left or up front, and then there's one more position for whoever it is. Um, how much of your free time do you spend on work for this channel? A lot, man, a lot. I'm trying to go full time at the moment, so a lot, basically, a lot of my midweek. I spend a lot of time on it. Carl from Bayern or Luca Williams Barnett. It's got like, yeah, you can't compare them now because Leonard Carl's just doing stupid stuff at first team level. Saar going, yeah, this is a good one to end on. I think Saar going to AFCON is a bit of a blessing. Guaranteed minutes. Needs that kind of that life back. It feels a bit like he needs to be somewhere where he feels happy. I think to play his football and hopefully going away with his country will be really good. And Senegal obviously have a massive chance to win it. So I think that'll be really good. Okay, I'm going to answer one more. Let's go with this one because it's a good one. We have too many of Bergvall, Saar type. Which would you rather keep? 100% Bergvall. I think Bergvall's ceiling is the highest, I'd say, in at least in the first team environment. Obviously, you got like Simmons and Romero and Van der Ven, but I'm talking about like the ones who are on the cuff of making it. Bergvall for me, like Gray has a higher floor than Bergvall. Like Gray, you're never going to get lower than a 7 out of 10. I truly believe that. I think if you play him every game, he's going to give a consistent level of good performances. Bergvall will be a bit more up and down. I think he's a bit further behind in his like tactical and mental development, but the upside is probably higher than Gray's because he's got insane talent. But that is one that needs good coaching, needs experience at first team level. I think Gray is more of like a guaranteed hit at Spurs. I think he'll just go on to play so many games for Spurs because he's so well rounded and he's so mature. So we'll see. I think obviously over Bergvall and Saar, it's got to be Bergvall. I think Bergvall's ceiling is much higher. I've been disappointed with Sar's development this season, but I think I still have belief that he'll go on. Yeah, that's all I've got time for. Please do subscribe though. Um, look out for that video tomorrow. It should be dropping like in the evening time, after I've edited it, so probably around 5 or 6 p.m. Full transfer special. Got a really good data guy coming on to kind of talk about different profiles and what we need as Spurs and how the data matches that up, and then which names I'm gonna kind of put forward for each position. We'll skim over the midfield because I'm going to go into that in more depth. But it'll be a left back. We're looking at a left winger, two, and then obviously a couple midfield options. So make sure you check that out. Please do subscribe and please do share the channel with any of your Spurs fan mates, family, friends, whatever. Yeah, come on you Spurs. Hopefully another win on the weekend. Thank you.